Friends, if you're in the mood for a lighthearted, romantic, and truly heartwarming film with a magical twist, then you're in for a treat. Because today, we're going to talk about the 1989 movie Chances Are. This film isn't just a typical romantic comedy. It's got love, laughter, a little bit of drama, and yes, a sprinkle of reincarnation to make things really interesting. Whether you're someone who grew up watching this film or you're hearing about it for the very first time, this video is going to be packed with everything you need to know about Chances Are. If you're visiting our channel for the first time, welcome! Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss out on fun and informative videos like this one. We bring you deep dives into movies both old and new, with detailed discussions, fun facts, and all the information a true movie lover would want. And today's video is no exception. In this video, we're going to take a deep look at Chances Are from every angle. We'll start with the basics, what the movie is about, the main storyline, and why it continues to hold a special place in the hearts of fans even after more than 3 decades. We'll also tell you where you can watch this movie today, whether it's available on any streaming platforms, OTT apps, or satellite television channels. No need to dig around the internet. We've done all the homework for you. But we won't stop there. We're going behind the scenes to explore how Chances Are was made. That includes the pre-production process, how the script came together, how the film was developed, and what the original ideas behind the story were. You'll learn about the casting process, who was considered for the roles, how the final cast came together, and what made each actor perfect for their character. Then we'll move on to the filming phase, where the movie was shot, how the scenes were crafted, and some fun or unusual things that happened on set. Whether it's unexpected weather, last-minute changes, or cool camera tricks, we'll talk about what went into turning the script into the movie you see on screen. And of course, we can't skip the technical side of things. From the direction and cinematography to editing and sound design, we'll highlight how each of these departments work together to bring the magical tone of Chances Are to life. We'll also take a moment to appreciate the music, because let's be honest, a romantic comedy needs the right soundtrack to really make you feel all the emotions. We'll look at who composed the score, what songs were used, and how music plays a key role in telling the story. We'll then talk numbers, how much the movie cost to make, how it performed at the box office, and whether it was a hit when it came out. Sometimes a movie becomes a cult classic over time, even if it doesn't do big business on release, and we'll tell you exactly what happened with Chances Are. Next, we'll jump into the heart of the movie, the story. I'll give you a short, spoiler-free summary of the plot to give you a taste of what the movie is all about. It's a fun and emotional ride that explores love, second chances, and the idea of destiny, all told through a very unique lens. I'll also share a quick review of the story, talking about what worked well, which moments stood out, and why it still resonates with audiences today. Of course, we'll take a close look at the cast and characters. Who's playing who, how they brought their roles to life, and what made their performances memorable. We'll talk about the chemistry between the lead actors, the charm of the supporting cast, and how each character added to the movie's overall appeal. You might recognize some big names in this film, and I'll give you a bit of background on what they were doing in their careers at the time. And finally, for those who love behind-the-scenes trivia, I've got some really fun facts lined up. Did you know there were some alternate casting choices that didn't pan out? Or that there are a few interesting connections between Chances Are and other popular films from the same era? I'll share all of that and more, those little details that only make you appreciate the film even more. So friends, sit back, relax, and be sure to watch this video till the very end. Whether you're planning to watch Chances Are tonight, or just want to learn more about a beloved classic, this video will give you all the information and insight you need. Alright then, let's jump into the magical, romantic world of Chances Are. Absolutely. Here's an even more detailed, immersive, and entertaining expansion of the plot and narrative section for Chances Are, 1989, designed to keep your audience fully engaged throughout. Alright, let's talk about Chances Are, a romantic comedy that grabs a handful of genres, throws them in a blender with a splash of reincarnation, and serves up a story that's as unpredictable as it is delightful. If you think you know where this movie is going based on the first 10 minutes, think again. Because just when you think you're settling into a classic love story, the movie hits you with one twist after another, some sweet, some strange, all totally entertaining. The The movie starts out feeling like a love story straight out of a golden age romance novel. We're in the early 1960s, and Louie Jeffries and Corinne are the perfect couple. Young, in love, newly married, and expecting a baby. Life couldn't be more perfect. But fate has other plans. Louie, who's a promising young district attorney, is tragically killed in a car accident on the way to dinner. So, right there, in the first 10 minutes, the movie makes it clear it's not going to play by the usual rom-com rules. And here's where things take a turn for the metaphysical. Louie's soul rises to the pearly gates of heaven, where the process of reincarnation is apparently managed with the same level of bureaucracy as a DMV office. A cosmic mix-up happens. His file gets mishandled, he's accidentally bumped to the front of the line, and before he can get his memory erased like everyone else, he's sent straight back to Earth. No orientation, no celestial guide, just boom, reborn. Cue the reincarnation twist that launches the entire story. Fast forward 23 years. Now we meet Alex Finch. He's a young man in his 20s, an aspiring journalist with a likable, slightly nerdy charm. He's fresh out of college, ambitious, and of course, unknowingly the reincarnation of Louie. Enter Miranda, brilliant, beautiful, warm-hearted Miranda, who just so happens to be Corinne's daughter. Yes, Corinne, Louie's widow. That's right. The love of Louie's past life is Miranda's mother. The moment Alex meets Miranda, there's a spark, but when he meets Corinne, something stirs deep inside him. A memory, a feeling, a connection that makes no logical sense but feels absolutely real. Now this is where the movie's plot goes from cute to completely wild but somehow still working. Slowly, Alex starts remembering bits and pieces of his past life as Louie. A melody on the piano triggers something. A familiar painting unlocks an old memory. And then suddenly, like a mental floodgate bursting open, everything comes rushing back. He realizes he was Louie. And here he is now, sitting across from his former wife and daughter, trying to make sense of what this means. This is the movie's first major turning point, where fantasy and reality crash into each other and Alex's identity crisis begins. Now imagine the position Alex is in. He's falling for Miranda, but part of him still loves Corinne. He's a 23-year-old man who remembers being a 30-something husband and father from a completely different era. He's stuck between two lifetimes and two loves, trying to figure out where he belongs. The movie uses this premise not just for laughs, although there are plenty of them, but also for some genuinely emotional and thoughtful moments. The conflict deepens with the introduction of Philip Train, Louie's old best friend and confidant. Philip has been quietly in love with Corinne for decades, but out of respect for Louie's memory, he never acted on it. Now, with Alex remembering everything, Philip is both shocked and threatened. There's an awkward mix of bromance, rivalry, and emotional tension as Philip grapples with whether Alex really is Louie and what that means for his own feelings toward Corinne. What keeps the movie from feeling heavy, though, is its incredible balance of tone. Just when things get emotionally intense, it pulls you back with a lighthearted moment. There's a hilarious scene where Alex, now fully remembering his past life, tries to explain everything to Corinne. And how do you tell your former wife that you're back, but in a younger man's body, and also currently dating her daughter? It's an impossible conversation, and the film has so much fun with it, turning it into a comedic high point laced with genuine heartbreak. At the heart of the narrative is the theme of identity. Who are we, really? Are we the sum of our memories? Our souls? Our relationships? Alex is torn. He wants to reclaim what he lost with Corinne, but he's not that man anymore. He's also not just Miranda's boyfriend or Philip's friend. He's all of them and none of them. This push and pull between past and present keeps the story emotionally grounded even as it spins its bizarre web. One of the most fascinating elements is how the movie uses reincarnation as more than just a gimmick. It becomes a lens to explore ideas of love, destiny, and second chances. There's something really touching about the idea that love could be so strong, it reaches across lifetimes. But there's also the sobering truth that people move on. Corinne has built a life. Miranda deserves her own story. And Alex has to figure out if he's living in the past or creating a future. The movie never fully dives into sci-fi or philosophy, but it dances on the edge of those themes, wrapped in the cozy blanket of a romantic comedy. And even with all its surreal elements, the emotional logic holds. The big emotional turning point comes when Alex realizes he can't keep straddling both lives. He has to let go. The film builds to this bittersweet, slightly magical moment that brings everything full circle, not with a big dramatic gesture, but with a quiet acceptance of how strange, beautiful, and unpredictable life can be. And through all of it, the movie keeps its tone light, its pacing breezy, and its storytelling tight. No scene feels wasted. Every beat, whether funny or moving, adds another layer to this beautifully strange puzzle. So no, chances are doesn't follow a typical linear romance structure. It doesn't give you just one couple to root for. It doesn't present love as neat and simple. Instead, it asks what happens when love spans beyond logic, when the heart remembers what the mind forgets. And somehow, it manages to wrap this all in a feel-good, crowd-pleasing story that leaves you wondering what you might do if given a second chance at love or life. Let's zoom in again on Alex Finch, our lovable, confused, reincarnated hero. In the beginning, he's a classic wide-eyed idealist, just out of college, bursting with energy and charm, and hoping to make it big in the world of journalism. He's the kind of guy who nervously fumbles his way through a job interview but somehow makes it endearing. But then his world is cracked wide open by a tidal wave of past life memories. Suddenly, he's no longer just Alex. He's also Louie, a man who lived, loved, and died before Alex was even born. The transformation isn't instant. It's not like flipping a switch. It's gradual and messy. At first, it's a déjà vu here, a weird flashback there. Then, slowly everything clicks. And suddenly, he's caught in an identity crisis that would make anyone spiral. He knows who he was, but who is he now? Alex's arc is fascinating because it's layered with contradiction. On the one hand, he wants to embrace his old life, reconnect with Corinne, reclaim the love he lost, pick up where he left off. But on the other hand, he's still a 23-year-old guy with modern dreams, living in a very different time. And then there's Miranda. His emotional pull toward her is real and confusing because his mind says this is your daughter, but his heart says you're falling for her. Watching him navigate this emotional landmine is equal parts hilarious and deeply human. His growth is learning to separate past love from present reality, to stop chasing what was and start owning who he is now. That's not just good character writing, that's soul-searching, wrapped in comedy gold. Now let's talk about Corinne Jeffries, who might just be the most elegantly complex character in the movie. She's not just a grieving widow. She's a woman who has spent over 2 decades building a life after unimaginable loss. She's raised a daughter on her own, quietly buried her grief, and pushed forward with grace. When she meets Alex, she doesn't immediately think ghost husband in a new body. Instead, there's a subtle, aching familiarity, a glimmer in his eyes, a mannerism, a piano piece he somehow knows how to play. The way she resists these signs is what makes her character powerful. She's logical, cautious, emotionally guarded. She doesn't want to believe in something so impossible because that would mean reopening a wound she worked so hard to close. But as Alex reveals more of Louie's memories, Corinne starts to unravel. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in soft, deeply emotional moments, lingering glances, quiet tears, the hesitation in her voice. You can see her balancing on a tightrope between disbelief and desperate hope. Her journey is about confronting unfinished grief, about whether the past should be resurrected or laid to rest. Her character doesn't just evolve emotionally, she transforms in her understanding of love, letting go, and what it means to move forward without forgetting where you came from. And then we get to Miranda Jeffries, who is, in many ways, the emotional spark of the story. She is smart, kind-hearted, independent, and full of warmth. She's not just the daughter character or a simple love interest. She's an active player in the story's emotional core. Miranda doesn't know anything about past lives or heavenly clerical errors. She just knows she's falling for a guy who seems to understand her in ways no one else does. Their connection feels real, and as the audience, we're just as torn as she is. Because we know the twist, and we watch in suspense, waiting for that moment when the truth detonates. And when it does, Miranda doesn't just react with shock. She processes, she confronts, she questions her own feelings, and then Alex's. There's hurt, yes, but there's also strength. Miranda's growth comes in how she reclaims her agency, how she navigates a romantic betrayal that isn't really a betrayal, but still feels like one. Her journey is about learning that love can be confusing, that people aren't always what they seem, and that clarity sometimes comes from chaos. She's a bright presence in a tangled narrative, and her emotional intelligence gives the story grounding. Let's not forget Philip Train, Louie's old best friend, and the film's quite emotional underdog. On the surface, Philip is a supporting character, but emotionally, he's crucial. He spent years watching Corinne from a distance, never quite confessing his feelings, always choosing loyalty over self-interest. He's the guy who sacrificed his chance at happiness because he couldn't betray his friend. And now, decades later, just when he might finally have a shot with Corinne, in walks a 23-year-old kid who might be Louie back from the dead. Philip's arc is one of delayed bravery. He's the guy who never made his move, who always stayed in the background, who now has to decide, do I keep hiding? Or do I fight for something real, even if it's messy? There's a wonderful sadness in Philip, a longing that makes him incredibly sympathetic, even when he's frustrated and bitter. His transformation is subtle, but powerful. He stops being the background friend. He steps into the light, ready to finally claim a life of his own. Together, these characters weave a tapestry of emotional complexity. They are each at a crossroads of past versus present, memory versus reality, love versus letting go. And what's magical is how their relationships drive every beat of the film. Alex and Corinne, tragic, tender, taboo. Alex and Miranda, conflicted, sincere, charged. Corinne and Philip, repressed longing, finally surfacing. Every connection matters. Every emotional twist feels earned. The dynamics shift constantly, and with each shift, the characters evolve just a little more. Even the minor characters, Heaven's gatekeepers, Miranda's college friends, Philip's law firm colleagues, add color to the story. They react to the strange events unfolding around them with disbelief, curiosity, and confusion, mirroring the audience's own roller coaster of emotions. In the end, Chances Are isn't just about one guy remembering his past life. It's about how that ripple affects everyone around him. It's about rediscovering love, facing loss, finding identity, and choosing how to move forward. These characters don't just exist to serve the plot, they are the plot. Their relationships are the story, and their transformations, funny, painful, messy, real, are what make this movie feel alive, even through all its supernatural absurdity. This movie's engine runs not on just its quirky plot, but on the soul and sincerity poured into it by every single cast member. And when you're dealing with a reincarnated husband, a daughter who accidentally falls for him, a widow facing an emotional time bomb, and a best friend who's waited 20 years to say how he feels, there's a lot of emotional range to explore. Luckily, this cast is more than ready. Robert Downey Jr. doesn't just play Alex Finch, he inhabits him with a kind of frantic, restless energy that captures the full absurdity of a situation. You can practically see the gears turning in his head as he starts experiencing flashbacks from Louie's life. One minute he's an eager, flirtatious young man trying to land a journalism job, and the next he's choking up at the sight of a family photo he shouldn't recognize. The shift is handled with such finesse that you never once feel like he's acting. You believe this guy is actually being hit with pieces of a past life he can't quite control. And the thing is, Downey never makes Alex a victim. He lets the confusion in, yes, but he also brings playfulness and curiosity. There's a brilliant scene where he starts listing facts about Corinne's life, details only Louie would know, and you see that sudden transition from charming young man to a presence haunted by something bigger. That moment, it hits like a lightning bolt, and it's all in the delivery. The way Downey's voice dips just slightly, how his eyes shift, how he stands a little straighter. You realize, this isn't Alex talking anymore. This is Louie, peeking out from the inside. He's also a master at walking the tightrope between uncomfortable and hilarious. The scenes with Miranda, where there's real chemistry between them before the revelation, it's not just romantic tension. There's a tragedy hiding underneath every flirty exchange, and Downey's performance adds this undercurrent of uncertainty. He knows the moment of truth is coming, and he lets us feel the impending collision even as we laugh. He plays it all: comedy, longing, identity crisis, even existential panic, with such spontaneity that the film never tips too far into drama or absurdity. It stays human, thanks to him. Then we have Cybill Shepherd, who delivers one of the most understated, emotionally rich performances in the film. She doesn't have the big, flashy moments of emotional breakdown or grand declarations. No, her strength is in stillness, in subtlety, in the way she lets Corinne's emotional walls crack just a little bit at a time. Shepherd makes Corinne a woman who has lived with silence for a long time. Silence around her grief, her love life, her regrets. She's practical, poised, elegant. But as soon as Alex enters her life, you start to see something change. Not because she wants it to, but because she can't not feel it. That look she gives him during their first real conversation, the flicker of disbelief, recognition, and suppressed emotion, it says more than a page of dialogue ever could. Her chemistry with Downey is fascinating because it's not rooted in the typical rom-com dynamic. It's layered with loss and longing, but also this deep, maternal caution. She's terrified of opening a door she sealed shut years ago. And Shepherd doesn't play her as naive. She plays her as someone who knows exactly how dangerous hope can be. The result? A character who feels utterly real. Corinne is thoughtful, guarded, and deeply loving. When she finally lets herself believe Alex might actually be Louie, Shepherd doesn't break down into tears. She simply softens. Her voice drops. Her expressions become warmer. It's heartbreakingly honest. Mary Stuart Masterson, as Miranda, is the emotional wild card of the film. She lights up the screen with this fresh, vibrant energy. Miranda is confident, funny, and sharp. Nothing about her feels manufactured. Masterson gives her this aura of realness that makes every scene she's in instantly engaging. Her romantic scenes with Alex are sweet and a little spicy, and you totally buy the chemistry. But what's really impressive is what she does after the twist drops. The emotional whiplash Miranda experiences, learning that the man she's falling for might be the reincarnation of her father, could have turned into a melodramatic mess. But Masterson handles it with grace, confusion, humor, and genuine heartbreak. You can see the thoughts racing through her mind in every look. She doesn't just react, she processes. She analyzes. She fights the feelings, even as part of her wants to hold on to them. She also adds a kind of emotional bravery to the role. Miranda could have collapsed under the weirdness. Instead, Masterson lets her push through, trying to understand, trying to adapt. That emotional adaptability, her ability to shift gears emotionally while staying true to her character, is what makes her performance so impressive. She's not just there to be part of a love triangle. She's the heart of the emotional mess, and she handles it like a pro. And Ryan O'Neal brings that quiet dignity to Philip Train that sneaks up on you. He starts off as a friendly, slightly awkward godfather type, someone who's been around forever and maybe always will be. But as the story unfolds, O'Neal lets Philip's inner world come forward, and you begin to understand the depth of his unspoken love for Corinne. His performance is all about restraint. You feel the years of waiting, of loyalty, of biting his tongue every time he wanted to say, "I love you." There's a beautiful sadness in the way he watches Alex and Corinne reconnect. You can see him wondering, did I wait too long? When Philip finally decides to make his move, it's not a moment of triumph, it's a moment of vulnerability. And O'Neal plays it with such raw humanity that it hits surprisingly hard. The supporting performances, especially the comedic ones, add just the right flavor. The celestial office workers at the beginning are dry, clinical, and somehow hilarious, treating Reincarnation like it's just another Tuesday at the Department of Mistakes. They set the tone perfectly. Even the smaller roles, like Miranda's classmates or the co-workers at the law firm, are played with charm and authenticity. They react to the unfolding madness like actual people would, with disbelief, curiosity, awkward silence, or poorly disguised gossip. It adds richness to the world, making it feel full and alive. What elevates all these performances is that they aren't just playing to the plot, they're playing the people. These actors commit fully to the emotional truth of their characters, even when the circumstances are wildly surreal. They make it believable. They make it intimate. They make it fun. And honestly, in a movie where a young man remembers being his girlfriend's dead dad, making it emotionally resonant and funny is nothing short of magic. That's the power of great performances. They make the impossible feel personal. And chances are, that's exactly what every actor does. Alright, Let's dive even deeper into Emile Ardolino's direction and chances are because there's a lot more going on beneath the surface than you might notice on a casual watch. Direction isn't just about calling action and cut. It's about crafting an entire world, shaping emotions, guiding performances, and setting the rhythm for how a story unfolds. And Ardolino, coming off a wildly different hit like Dirty Dancing, shows he's got serious range by delivering a film that's funny, romantic, bittersweet, and downright magical, all at once. First off, the tonal gymnastics here are impressive. The script throws everything at you: reincarnation, romantic mix-ups, family secrets, identity crises, and a little bit of cosmic bureaucracy thrown in for flavor. This kind of story could have easily felt like a messy jumble of ideas or a slapstick farce, but Ardolino never lets it tip over into campy territory. He's got this knack for balancing comedy and drama so seamlessly that the transitions feel natural, not jarring. For example, a scene that starts with a lighthearted quip about life after death can morph into an emotional moment about grief or love lost, and you're never pulled out of the story. That's the kind of tonal control that takes real skill. One of Ardolino's most subtle but effective tools is his approach to pacing. He understands that this isn't just a story about laughs or romance, it's a story about timing, fate, and emotional discovery. So he carefully paces the reveals, letting moments breathe just enough to build anticipation without dragging. The story is full of twists and surprises, but Ardolino's pacing means you get time to react, to feel confused alongside the characters, and to fall in love with them all over again. For instance, when Alex's memories of Louie start coming back, the director lets those moments linger, not rushing into explanations, but allowing us to experience the confusion and wonder right alongside Alex. This slow unfolding keeps the audience hooked and emotionally invested. Stylistically, Ardolino doesn't go for flashy camera tricks or over-the-top visual flair. Instead, his style is clean and intimate. The camera work often favors medium shots and close-ups that highlight the actors' expressions and interactions, emphasizing the emotional currents beneath the surface. There's a smart use of framing throughout the film. Characters are sometimes positioned to reflect their relationships or emotional states. For example, early scenes have Alex and Corinne physically distant in the frame, mirroring their emotional disconnect, while later scenes bring them closer visually as their bond rekindles. It's visual storytelling that feels natural rather than forced. Ardolino's direction also shines in how he handles ensemble scenes. There's a delicate balance in managing multiple characters and subplots, and he juggles it with ease. Whether it's a casual dinner where undercurrents of old love simmer beneath polite conversation, or a chaotic party scene with mistaken identities flying around, every character moment feels purposeful. There's a rhythm to the dialogue and blocking that enhances both the comedy and the tension. The way characters enter and exit rooms, overhear conversations, or awkwardly share glances, all of it feels choreographed with a director's eye for timing and flow. Another notable aspect is how Ardolino draws out performances. He trusts his actors to deliver nuanced portrayals and creates a safe space for them to explore the emotional complexity of their roles. The director's subtle guidance allows for moments of genuine tenderness to emerge amidst the comedy. Scenes like Curran's quiet reflections or Philip's hesitant confession wouldn't carry the same weight without this careful, restrained direction. Ardolino avoids melodrama, opting instead for quiet honesty, which makes those emotional payoffs hit even harder. The setting of Washington, D.C. is another small but important directorial choice. Instead of defaulting to the usual romantic comedy backdrop of New York or L.A., Ardolino uses D.C.'s unique mix of history, tradition, and formality to underscore the themes of the film. The city feels lived in and real, not just a set dressing. This backdrop adds a layer of gravitas and subtle symbolism, old buildings and monuments standing as reminders of the past, just like the characters are haunted and shaped by their histories. It's a thoughtful touch that enhances the story's exploration of memory and legacy. Ardolino also shows a keen sense for comedic timing that elevates the humor without making it feel cheap or forced. The editing and chances are as sharp, with quick reaction cuts and perfectly timed pauses that let the jokes land naturally. The physical comedy, like moments when Alex is awkwardly navigating his new life or fumbling with his past knowledge, is handled with a lightness that makes it hilarious without descending into slapstick. Ardolino's direction ensures the comedy serves the characters and the story rather than overshadowing them. The way Ardolino handles the film's metaphysical elements deserves special mention. The concept of reincarnation and life after death is woven into the story in a way that feels grounded and emotionally honest rather than mystical or abstract. The scenes involving the celestial office workers, for example, are played with a dry humor and matter-of-factness that makes the otherworldly elements accessible and fun. This choice to keep the supernatural grounded in everyday reality helps the audience suspend disbelief and invest in the characters' emotional journeys. In scenes where emotions run high, Ardolino's direction becomes almost poetic. He allows moments to stretch, just enough for the audience to connect deeply with the characters. Whether it's a lingering look, a barely whispered word, or a pause filled with unsaid feelings, these quiet moments are what give Chances Are its emotional resonance. It's a reminder that great directing isn't always about the big, showy scenes. It's about knowing when to be still and when to move. Overall, Ardolino's direction in Chances Are is a masterclass in tonal balance, pacing, and emotional clarity. He takes a story that could have easily become a confusing mess and molds it into a warm, engaging, and surprisingly heartfelt film. The careful choices he makes, from how he frames characters to how he paces revelations, shape an experience that feels both whimsical and deeply human. The movie is a delicate dance of comedy and romance, past and present, laughter and tears, and it's Ardolino's steady hand that keeps it all in perfect step. Let's take a deeper dive into the cinematography of Chances Are because John Bailey's work here is like the film's quiet secret weapon, often underappreciated, but absolutely essential to making this quirky, heartfelt story come alive visually. The cinematography isn't flashy or showy. Instead, it operates like a gentle storyteller, weaving mood, emotion, and theme through every shot, every lighting choice, every camera movement. It's the kind of visual craftsmanship that doesn't scream for attention but sneaks under your skin and makes you feel things without even realizing it. From the very opening scenes, you get a sense that the camera has a personality of its own, curious, observant, and thoughtful. Bailey chooses angles and framing that invite the audience to step into the character's shoes rather than watching from a distance. The camera often stays at eye level, creating a natural and intimate perspective that feels like you're part of the conversation or quietly witnessing something personal. It's a warm invitation into the story's world, which is especially important given the film's mix of everyday romance and supernatural reincarnation mystery. You never feel alienated from the characters or the bizarre situations they find themselves in because the cinematography keeps things grounded and approachable. Lighting plays a huge role in setting the emotional tone throughout the film. Early on, the lighting is soft and warm, suffused with a kind of nostalgic glow that immediately sets a sentimental mood. This visual warmth mirrors the film's themes of memory, love lost and found, and the bittersweet nature of second chances. When the story starts delving into the mystery of Alex's past life as Louie, the lighting subtly shifts to cooler, sometimes shadowy tones. This is never threatening or creepy. Remember, this is still a romantic comedy, but it does add a whisper of tension and uncertainty. The shadows creeping in at the edges of scenes visually symbolize the parts of Alex's past that are still hidden and waiting to be uncovered. These lighting transitions help the audience feel the gradual unfolding of mystery alongside the characters, making abstract ideas like reincarnation emotionally tangible. Bailey's camera angles are thoughtfully chosen to enhance the storytelling without calling attention to themselves. The film sticks mostly to medium shots and close-ups, which keep the focus squarely on the characters' faces and body language. These choices emphasize the emotional undercurrents that run through the story, the flickers of recognition, the unspoken feelings, the awkward hesitations. When Alex starts having flashbacks or moments of confusion, the camera gets even tighter, zeroing in on micro-expressions like a twitch of an eyebrow or a sudden glance away. Those moments create an intimate connection between the audience and Alex's internal struggle, letting us experience his fragmented sense of self in a deeply personal way. Framing is another subtle but powerful storytelling tool at work. The way characters are positioned within the frame often reflects their relationships and emotional distances. For example, scenes with Alex, Corinne, and Miranda frequently use triangular compositions that visually underline the love triangle at the heart of the story. Sometimes one character is in sharp focus in the foreground while another is blurred in the background, highlighting emotional separation or secrets. In other scenes, characters physically close in the frame suggest growing intimacy or connection. These compositional choices do a lot of heavy lifting without any dialogue, letting the visuals communicate complicated feelings and relationships in a quietly sophisticated way. Visually striking moments, while not frequent, stand out because they're so carefully crafted. Take the flashback sequences, where Alex remembers Louie's past life. The cinematography shifts into a dreamlike mode with soft focus, warm golden hues, and gentle camera movement. These scenes almost feel like memories melting into the present, beautifully capturing the film's core theme of past and present colliding. The softness of the image gives the impression of something just out of reach, a fragile glimpse of something lost and precious. It's a perfect visual metaphor for the experience of memory itself. Then there are the scenes involving the celestial bureaucracy, the office where Louie's soul gets its reincarnation paperwork. These sequences could easily become over the top or campy, but Bailey's lighting and framing keep them grounded and oddly mundane. The cool, muted palette and sterile composition contrast amusingly with the idea of a heavenly office, making these supernatural elements feel approachable and even funny without undercutting their significance in the story. It's a clever visual balance that supports the film's unique blend of comedy and fantasy. The Washington, D.C. setting isn't just a backdrop, but an active part of the film's visual storytelling. Bailey captures the city's stately architecture, quiet residential streets, and sun-dappled parks with a painterly eye. The buildings and monuments feel like silent witnesses to the characters' dramas, embodying themes of history, legacy, and the passage of time. The cinematography gives the city a timeless quality, reinforcing the film's exploration of how past lives and past loves never truly disappear. They linger like shadows in familiar places. This sense of place adds weight and texture to what could have otherwise been a purely whimsical story. Movement-wise, the camera work is smooth and deliberate. It glides through scenes with a graceful steadiness, rarely jerking or cutting abruptly. This fluidity matches the film's tone, light, romantic, with a touch of melancholy, and allows the audience to settle into the story's rhythm. When the plot thickens or comedic chaos erupts, the editing picks up the pace, but the camera itself stays calm and observant. This creates a lovely contrast that keeps the film feeling balanced and polished. Color is another subtle but essential piece of the visual puzzle. The palette is dominated by soft pastels, warm earth tones, and gentle blues. These choices evoke comfort, nostalgia, and emotional warmth. In moments of confusion or tension, the colors cool down and desaturate just a bit, echoing the character's inner turmoil without hitting you over the head with visual cues. It's a refined use of color that complements the story's emotional ebb and flow. In the end, the cinematography of Chances Are feels like a quiet conversation with the audience, thoughtful, intimate, and rich with nuance. It doesn't shout or demand your attention, but instead invites you to look closer, feel deeper, and notice the little details that make the story resonate. Through careful lighting, framing, camera movement, and color, John Bailey's work gently guides us through a tale of love lost and found, memories haunting the present, and the extraordinary hidden in the everyday. It's a perfect visual match for a movie that's equal parts funny, romantic, mysterious, and heartfelt. Alright, let's really sink our teeth into the editing and pacing of Chances Are, because this is where the movie's unique charm and storytelling rhythm come alive in a way that's both smooth and surprising. Editing might often be the unsung hero in films like this, but here it's a carefully crafted pulse that keeps everything working together, balancing comedy, romance, mystery, and even moments of genuine emotion without ever losing the audience's interest or the story's momentum. It's a juggling act, and the editors pull it off with style. Right from the very beginning, the film's editing sets a tone that feels lively but never rushed. The story flows naturally, and scenes transition so seamlessly that you hardly notice the cuts. This smoothness helps keep the narrative grounded, making sure you're never jolted out of the experience by awkward jumps or pacing that drags. Instead, it's like you're on a gentle but engaging ride where every scene rolls into the next with purpose and clarity. The editors seem to know exactly when to speed up the tempo and when to let the story breathe, and that intuitive pacing is crucial because the film juggles a lot of different emotions and plot threads. One of the most delightful things about the editing is how it plays with timing to enhance the film's comedic beats. Comedy is often all about timing, and here the editors nail it. Whether it's Alex's awkward moments trying to navigate his new reality, or the witty banter between characters, the cuts are timed perfectly to maximize laughs. Quick reaction shots, those split-second glimpses of surprise, confusion, or disbelief on the characters' faces, pop up just when you need them, adding an extra punch to the humor. For instance, the way the editors cut between Alex's puzzled expressions and the more confident, sometimes exasperated reactions of Corinne and Miranda really amplifies the comic tension. It feels effortless but is obviously carefully orchestrated. But the editing isn't just about quick laughs. When the story takes a turn toward deeper, more introspective moments, the pace slows down, allowing the emotional weight to settle in. Scenes where Alex grapples with his memories of his past life, or where the characters confront complicated feelings, are given space to unfold naturally. The editors wisely resist the urge to rush these moments, instead letting long takes or slower cuts create an atmosphere where the audience can connect emotionally. These quieter sequences contrast beautifully with the quicker, more playful scenes, giving the film a rhythm that feels real and engaging rather than formulaic. Another fascinating aspect is how the editing handles the film's structure and reveals. Chances Are has a bit of a mystery at its core, the question of identity, memory, and who's who, which means the editors have to carefully balance what to reveal and when. Instead of spilling all the secrets at once, the pacing strategically spaces out clues and surprises, building curiosity and tension. This teasing of information makes the audience feel like they're piecing together the puzzle alongside the characters. The timing of these reveals is spot on, with just enough hesitation before a key fact is dropped or a realization dawns, keeping viewers hooked without overwhelming them. The flow of dialogue scenes also deserves special mention. Long conversations can easily become tedious if not handled well in the editing room, but here the cuts between speakers are smart and dynamic. The editors often linger on small facial expressions or subtle gestures, which adds layers of meaning beneath the surface dialogue. Sometimes they'll hold a shot just a bit longer on a character's reaction to let unspoken feelings sink in, or cut sharply to another character to highlight a shift in mood or tension. This kind of rhythm makes the dialogue feel lively and authentic, preventing the scenes from becoming static or boring. When things get chaotic, like moments of misunderstandings or frantic attempts to cover up Alex's unusual situation, the editing kicks up the tempo. The cuts become snappier, quickening the pace and heightening the sense of frenzy. This contrast between calm, measured scenes and rapid-fire comedic sequences creates a dynamic viewing experience that keeps the audience on their toes. It's like the editing itself is joining the fun, speeding up to mirror the characters' rising panic or excitement, then slowing down again as the dust settles. What's really impressive is how all these editing choices come together without ever feeling forced or artificial. The flow of the film feels organic, as if the story is unfolding in real time rather than being pieced together from separate parts. The transitions don't call attention to themselves, but rather serve the story, enhancing both its humor and heart. This kind of editing takes a lot of skill, because it requires a deep understanding of the narrative's emotional beats and the characters' journeys. In addition, the editors strike a great balance between maintaining clarity and embracing subtlety. Even when juggling multiple characters and intersecting plot lines, like the romantic entanglements between Alex, Corinne, and Philip, they keep everything clear without resorting to heavy-handed exposition or confusing cuts. The pacing here is like a well-rehearsed dance, where each character's moment is timed perfectly to build tension, reveal emotion, or deliver a laugh. It's a fine line, and the editing crosses it with finesse. The overall rhythm of the film, this ebb and flow between fast and slow, between lighthearted and serious, greatly enhances the emotional impact. When the pacing is just right, the funny moments feel funnier, the romantic scenes more tender, and the revelations hit harder. The editing acts as a subtle emotional guide, shaping how the audience experiences every twist and turn. It's this carefully managed pacing that helps keep the film feeling fresh and engaging from start to finish. So really, The editing and pacing and chances aren't just technical details. They're part of what gives the movie its unique energy and charm. They help create a storytelling rhythm that's playful yet poignant, smooth yet surprising, and always just right for the roller coaster of emotions the film takes you on. It's a wonderful example of how editing isn't just about cutting footage. It's about sculpting time, emotion, and experience to make a story truly come alive on screen. Alright, let's really unpack the soundtrack and score of Chances Are, because this element of the film works on so many subtle, intricate levels to lift the entire experience. Music in movies often operates like the unsung hero. Sometimes it sneaks under your radar, but when it's done right, it shapes how you feel, how you connect with the story, and how you remember the film long after the credits roll. In Chances Are, the soundtrack and score do exactly that, weaving themselves into the narrative with a kind of effortless charm that's easy to overlook but impossible to ignore once you start paying attention. First off, credit goes to composer Patrick Williams, whose score is a masterclass in balancing tone. The film has a blend of genres: romantic comedy, light supernatural mystery, and a little bit of heartfelt drama, and the music shifts between these moods with incredible finesse. Right from the opening scenes, the score sets the mood with a kind of breezy, light-hearted feel that invites you into the quirky world of the film. It's playful and whimsical, almost like the music itself is giving you a wink that says, "Get ready for something fun with a touch of magic." This tone perfectly matches Alex's character. He's bewildered, charming, and a little bit lost in this new reality, and the music dances around those feelings beautifully. What's impressive is how the music adapts to the story's emotional contours. During scenes where Alex is stumbling through his awkward attempts to reconnect with people from his past life, the score adopts a mischievous, bouncy rhythm. The instrumentation often includes light percussion, soft piano, and sometimes a jazzy touch that keeps the mood buoyant. This playful musical undercurrent helps make the sometimes complicated plot easier to digest because it's wrapped in an atmosphere of lightness and charm. Instead of feeling heavy or confusing, these moments come across as endearing and even fun, thanks in no small part to the score's clever tonal choices. Then, when the story slows down and leans into its romantic or introspective moments, the music softens considerably. Here, the score blossoms into lush, melodic themes dominated by gentle strings and piano, providing a warm and inviting backdrop for the characters' emotional journeys. These tender moments, when the characters grapple with love, loss, and identity, feel much deeper and more resonant because the music swells just enough to carry the emotion without drowning it out. The score becomes a kind of emotional amplifier, subtly urging the audience to lean in and really feel what's happening beneath the surface. It's a delicate balance. Too much music could feel manipulative, but here, it feels like a natural extension of a character's feelings. One of the most fascinating aspects of a soundtrack is its use of silence and restraint. Unlike scores that constantly fill every moment with sound, this film knows when to pull back. There are key scenes where the music drops away completely, allowing the raw sound of dialogue, breathing, and ambient noise to take center stage. This absence of music actually heightens the impact of these scenes, making moments of revelation or emotional confrontation feel more intimate and immediate. For example, when Alex experiences flashbacks of his past life, or when Corinne faces difficult truths, the quiet underscores the gravity of the moment. This technique shows a sophisticated understanding of sound design. Knowing when not to play music can be just as powerful as the notes themselves. Another clever technique is the use of recurring musical motifs. These small, repeating melodic phrases pop up throughout the film to tie together different scenes and emotions. Think of them as musical bookmarks that remind you of key themes, like love, identity, and memory, without needing any explicit exposition. When you hear a familiar motif again, it creates a sense of connection and continuity, subtly reinforcing the film's emotional through line. This technique helps the soundtrack act as a kind of silent narrator, guiding the audience's feelings and expectations in a way that's almost subliminal but incredibly effective. Stylistically, the soundtrack is a great blend of classic romantic orchestration with hints of contemporary late 1980s sounds. You'll notice soft jazz elements, gentle percussion, and occasional light electronic touches that give the music a fresh, period-appropriate vibe. This mix grounds the supernatural and fantastical elements of a story in a relatable, real-world setting. The result is a score that feels both timeless and distinctly of its era, which adds an extra layer of texture and character to the film's atmosphere. What's especially fun is how the music interacts with the supernatural premise of the film without going overboard. The story involves reincarnation and soul-switching, which could easily have been scored with heavy, eerie, or dramatic music, but instead the soundtrack treats these themes with a light, playful touch. The score hints at wonder and mystery, but stays firmly rooted in the romantic comedy tone. This keeps the film's overall mood consistent and enjoyable while still respecting the story's more unusual aspects. Also worth mentioning is the way the soundtrack builds to and through the film's emotional highs and lows. During moments of romantic revelation or personal growth, the music rises and swells, helping the audience feel the full impact of the characters' journeys. Conversely, in scenes of confusion or tension, the score can become more subdued or uncertain, mirroring the characters' internal struggles. This dynamic use of music keeps the emotional stakes high without ever feeling forced or melodramatic. Finally, the closing credits feature a memorable song that perfectly captures the film's spirit, optimistic, heartfelt, and just a touch nostalgic. It's the kind of tune that leaves you humming after the movie ends, wrapping up the experience on a high note. This final musical touch reminds you how important the soundtrack is in shaping the film's identity and emotional resonance. All in all, the soundtrack and score of Chances are much more than just background accompaniment. They are integral to the storytelling, shaping the atmosphere, highlighting emotional beats, and enhancing the film's unique blend of romance, comedy, and fantasy. The music's playful yet heartfelt personality makes the story feel alive and vibrant, turning a charming tale into a fully immersive experience that stays with you long after you've watched it. It's a shining example of how thoughtful, well-crafted music can elevate a film from good to truly memorable. Alright, let's really unpack the themes and messages that Chances Are explores, because beneath its lighthearted, romantic comedy surface, this film sneaks in some surprisingly deep and thought-provoking ideas. What's really fascinating is how these themes are woven into the story with such a playful touch that you hardly realize you're being invited to reflect on big questions about life, love, and identity. It never feels preachy or heavy. It's like having a meaningful conversation with a friend while sharing a laugh. At the very core of the film is a theme of love that transcends time and even death. Chances Are asks us to imagine that love isn't just about physical presence or shared memories, but something far more enduring, almost spiritual. The whole reincarnation premise is a clever way of dramatizing that idea. Alex is technically a different person now, yet his soul and feelings from his past life still linger, pulling him toward Corinne and others from before. This makes the film a meditation on what it really means to love someone. Is it the memories you hold, the experiences you share, or some deeper connection that defies logic? The film toys with this question lightheartedly, but it leaves a sweet, lingering impression that love is maybe the most mysterious and powerful force out there. This theme resonates because it taps into a universal human hope that love doesn't just end, it transforms and survives beyond all odds. Closely tied to that is the film's exploration of identity. Who are we if not the sum of our memories, our experiences, and our relationships? Alex's character is a walking puzzle when it comes to this question. He's got a new body, a new name, and a life that's only partly his own, but the echoes of his past self surface in funny and poignant ways. This raises questions about the fluidity of identity. Are we fixed beings, or do we evolve and change depending on what memories we carry or lose? The movie handles this with a light touch, but it's a surprisingly layered exploration. Watching Alex struggle to reconcile the man he was with the man he is now adds emotional complexity and invites the audience to reflect on their own sense of self and how it's shaped by past and present. Another big theme running through Chances Are is that of second chances, not just in romance but in life. The film feels like a celebration of the idea that it's never too late to start over, to make different choices, or to find happiness in unexpected places. Alex's journey is all about rediscovery and renewal, and this theme is delivered with warmth, humor, and a genuine sense of hope. There's no preachiness here, just a simple but powerful message that life's twists and turns can lead to new beginnings if we're open to them. This is something everyone can relate to, and the movie's lighthearted tone makes this message feel inspiring without being heavy. The theme of honesty and communication also plays a quiet but important role. The film's tangled web of mistaken identities and hidden truths leads to plenty of comedic moments, but underneath the laughs there's a subtle message about the importance of being open and truthful with those you care about. The misunderstandings in the story show how secrets and half-truths can complicate relationships and cause unnecessary pain. This isn't a heavy-handed moral, but more of an underlying lesson that good communication is key to connection, whether in love or friendship. Memory is another fascinating theme that Chances Are explores with nuance. The film doesn't just treat memory as a simple record of the past. It shows memory as something fragile, elusive, and sometimes unreliable. Alex's fragmented recollections highlight how memory shapes identity and relationships, but also how imperfect and incomplete it can be. This adds emotional depth to the story, showing how difficult it can be to connect with people when the past is fuzzy or inaccessible. The idea that memories can both bind us and confuse us gives the film a bittersweet undercurrent, adding texture to what might otherwise be a straightforward comedy. What makes all these themes work so well is the film's subtlety and restraint. None of these big ideas feel forced or shoehorned in. They're gently woven into the characters' journeys and the plot twists in a way that feels natural and authentic. The story trusts the audience to pick up on these messages through the emotions and interactions on screen, rather than spelling everything out. This subtlety makes the themes feel earned and meaningful, rather than cliché or overdone. The film also cleverly balances these thoughtful themes with a breezy, upbeat tone. It shows that movies don't have to be heavy or serious to explore important ideas. By mixing comedy, romance, and supernatural elements, Chances Are gives these themes a fresh and entertaining context. This combination makes the deeper messages more approachable and enjoyable, appealing to both casual viewers looking for a fun story and those who like a little something more to chew on. Ultimately, Chances Are is a film that invites you to think about love, identity, memory, and the possibilities of second chances, all while making you laugh and feel good. It's a rare mix of fun and thoughtful storytelling, where the big questions don't weigh you down but instead add richness and heart to the charming, quirky story. This blend of lightness and depth is what gives the film its unique charm, fun to watch, but with ideas that stick with you long after the credits roll. Alright, let's really dive deep into the visual effects and CGI of Chances Are and explore how they play a crucial yet understated role in shaping the film's unique atmosphere. Because this isn't your typical effects-heavy blockbuster, it's a romantic comedy wrapped in a supernatural mystery, so the effects have to serve the story delicately. They're more about enhancing the magic and emotional resonance than about dazzling spectacle. And that's exactly what the filmmakers pull off with a surprising amount of finesse. Starting with the era in which Chances Are was made, the late 1980s, it's important to appreciate the kind of technology available back then. Unlike today's CGI, which can create entire worlds digitally, the film relies heavily on practical effects combined with the early stages of computer-generated imagery. This means the effects have a tactile, physical quality to them. There's an analog warmth and a certain handcrafted charm that comes through, which perfectly suits the film's blend of the real and the supernatural. Rather than screaming, "Look at me, I'm an effect," these visuals quietly support the storytelling, enhancing the film's emotional core and helping the audience suspend disbelief without distraction. One of the standout aspects of the effects work is how seamlessly they integrate with the film's grounded, everyday settings. The story revolves around a seemingly normal group of people dealing with an extraordinary situation, a man who's been reincarnated and trying to reconnect with his past life. Because of this, the effects had to be subtle enough not to shatter the film's intimate, relatable vibe. For example, the moments that hint at Alex's past life, like flickers of memory or ghostly glimmers, are conveyed through gentle visual touches. These might be soft overlays, shimmering lights, or fleeting distortions that feel like glimpses into another realm. They're not the kind of in-your-face effects you see in action movies, but they're incredibly effective at building an atmosphere of mystery and wonder. They invite the viewer to lean in and pay attention to the small magical details rather than overwhelming the senses. The practical effects in the film deserve special mention. There's a wonderful blend of traditional techniques, clever lighting, smoke, reflections, and camera tricks that bring the supernatural elements to life. These hands-on effects give the film a sense of realism that pure digital effects often struggle to achieve. For instance, scenes where characters sense something odd or experience a flash from the past rely heavily on performance combined with practical visual cues. This approach keeps the emotional stakes grounded while still making the fantastical elements feel believable. It's an elegant reminder that sometimes less is more, especially when your story depends on emotional connection rather than spectacle. The CGI, while modest by today's standards, plays a supporting role by smoothing transitions and enhancing the magical feel in key moments. It doesn't call attention to itself with flashy explosions or wild effects. Instead, it's used strategically, subtle glows, slight blurs, or shimmering light effects that underscore the supernatural without ever feeling out of place. This restraint is part of what makes the film's magic so convincing. Rather than distracting from the characters and their story, the CGI quietly weaves through scenes like an invisible thread, adding texture and depth without taking center stage. Another clever aspect is how the visual effects work in harmony with other elements like cinematography and production design. The filmmakers use soft focus, warm color palettes, and carefully composed shots to create an inviting atmosphere that blends the ordinary and the extraordinary. Lighting plays a huge role here. Think of the way sunlight filters through a window, or how a room's shadows shift just slightly to suggest something unseen. These visual choices enhance the effects, making the supernatural moments feel like natural extensions of the environment. It's like the magic is hiding in plain sight, waiting for the characters and audience to notice. When it comes to scenes that involve more direct supernatural phenomena, such as flashbacks or moments where past and present collide, the effects get a little more experimental but still stay grounded. Layered imagery, double exposures, and subtle distortions communicate the fluidity of time and identity without overwhelming the viewer. These moments stand out not because of their technical bravado, but because of their emotional resonance. They visually represent the tangled threads of memory and soul that the story explores, making abstract concepts tangible without sacrificing clarity. Performance and sound design also play crucial roles in selling the effects. The actors' reactions, surprise, confusion, wonder, combined with atmospheric sounds and minimal visual cues, create a believable sense of the uncanny. This mix shows how the film uses effects not as standalone showpieces, but as tools integrated with storytelling and acting to build emotional impact. The magic feels lived in and real because it's tied directly to how the characters experience it. What's especially impressive is how these understated effects mirror the film's central themes of love, memory, and identity. The subtle glow or flicker isn't just a neat trick. It's a visual metaphor for the intangible connections between souls, the elusive nature of memory, and the idea that some things, like love, can't be pinned down or fully explained. The effects become a poetic language that adds depth and beauty to the story without overshadowing it. In the end, chances are shows that visual effects don't need to be flashy or overwhelming to be effective. By blending practical and digital techniques with a focus on subtlety and storytelling, the film creates a believable magical world that supports its emotional beats. The visual effects act like a gentle sprinkle of stardust, enough to enchant but never enough to distract. This balance keeps the viewer fully immersed, making the supernatural elements feel like an organic part of the character's reality and the story's charm. The result is a film where magic feels real, love feels timeless, and the effects quietly enhance the heartfelt journey without stealing the spotlight. The set design and locations and chances don't just serve as a backdrop, they actively breathe life into the film's whimsical yet deeply human story. This is one of those rare romantic fantasies where the locations aren't flashy or exotic, yet they somehow feel richer, warmer, and more emotionally loaded than 1,000 green screen kingdoms or CGI landscapes. Why? Because every single space is carefully crafted to echo the emotional heartbeat of the characters. It's like the world itself is subtly in tune with the reincarnation mystery unfolding on screen, even if no one else knows it yet. Let's begin with the central character of Curran's house, a setting that feels less like a physical location and more like a preserved emotional museum. When you walk into this space, it's as though you've stepped into a scrapbook. The color palette is soft and faded, like an old photograph. The decor is tasteful and a little nostalgic, There are soft floral curtains, antique picture frames, bookshelves full of titles that haven't been touched in years, and furniture that still carries the indent of someone who once sat there every day. It's the kind of house where time gently pools in the corners. You instantly understand that this is a space soaked in memory and grief, but also in love and resilience. You don't need a narrator to tell you Corinne hasn't quite let go of her husband. The house already told you that. Now when Alex enters the space, this literal shrine to his past life, it creates a wave of tension and irony. He doesn't recognize it, but something in his body does. And what's brilliant is that the production design never goes overboard. There's no thunderclap of realization, no eerie blue lighting, it's just a room. But it's his room. Or rather, it was his. The emotional dissonance is baked into the wallpaper, the lighting, the very structure of the place. It's as if the set design itself is a ghost, quietly haunting him until he figures it out. Then there's Miranda's world, which is its own masterclass in visual contrast. Her settings are fresh, youthful, and energetic. College campuses, open-air cafes, breezy apartments. Her environment is full of bright light and motion, with bolder colors, sharper lines, and fewer sentimental artifacts. This is a world that belongs to the living. It's forward-looking. It hasn't been weighed down by the past, which makes the collision of her storyline with Alex's reincarnated past life even more deliciously ironic. Her carefree, modern-day aesthetic clashes beautifully with the old-soul vibes of Alex's emerging memories. Let's talk about Washington, D.C., because this city wears a completely different suit, and chances are. Forget the politics and high-stakes drama we usually associate with it. This is a softer, more poetic D.C., lovingly framed like a secret garden hidden in plain sight. There are tree-lined streets where leaves fall like confetti, cozy sidewalk cafes where romantic tension simmers, old buildings with ivy climbing up the walls like time itself is trying to hold on. The city becomes a mirror of the film's central tension, how the past bleeds into the present in ways that are quiet, subtle, and inescapably beautiful. One standout location is the library. It's not just a plot device, it's a portal. There's something reverent about how the production treats the space. We're talking about polished wood, towering bookcases, soft lighting that makes every scene feel like it's happening in the golden hour of the soul. It's not just where Alex uncovers the mystery of his past life. It's where the film tells us, visually and emotionally, that the truth is always hidden in the quiet corners. You don't need jump scares or loud reveals when you've got atmosphere like this. The very silence of the place becomes suspenseful. The restaurant where Alex works is another clever design choice. It's chaotic, fast-paced, and modern, full of clinking glasses, bustling waiters, and loud conversations. It reflects a kind of new identity, a life built from scratch. But every time Alex is there, he's trying to play a part, to keep the reincarnation stuff buried. The sleek design of the restaurant contrasts with the emotional mess he's carrying. The space itself becomes a visual representation of his internal divide, polished on the surface, complicated underneath. Now let's zero in on props and smaller set elements, because this film absolutely lives in the details. A locket on a dresser, a black and white photo in a frame, an old coat draped on a chair that no one has moved in years. These aren't just decorative, they're emotional time bombs. They serve as connective tissue between past and present. Each item feels placed with intention, like it's part of a larger puzzle. And they never distract. Instead, they enrich. They reward viewers who are paying attention. Lighting also plays a huge role in the atmosphere of each space. In the more emotionally raw scenes, like those between Corinne and Alex, the lighting softens, often with warm tones that bathe everything in a golden hue. It makes you feel like you're watching a memory in real time. It adds a dreamlike layer to scenes that might otherwise feel awkward or overly complex. And in scenes of personal realization or inner conflict, the lighting subtly cools, giving us a sense that the emotional weather is changing. Even outdoor spaces are curated with care. Whether it's a walk through a quiet park, a wistful gaze over a bridge, or a city street at twilight, these places feel both grounded and slightly enchanted. They offer emotional breathing room. They allow the story to shift gears without breaking rhythm. These spaces feel poetic, never too clean, never too dramatic, just naturally cinematic. You believe this world exists, and because of that, you believe the impossible story that unfolds within it. So, If you're watching, chances are thinking, this just feels good, this feels right. That's the invisible hand of a set design and location work doing its job brilliantly. It's not just where the story happens. It is the story. From every lamp to every leaf on the sidewalk, the world of the film is built with care, and that care bleeds into every emotional beat. The magic of the movie isn't just in its premise, it's in the spaces that cradle it, quietly telling you, yes, this could happen. Right here. Right now. The dialogue and script and chances are like a well-played piano tune, full of playful high notes, deep emotional chords, and just enough rhythm to keep your heart and your head tapping along. It's the kind of screenplay that doesn't call attention to itself with flashy monologues or theatrical declarations, but instead charms you line by line, building character, comedy, and emotional texture without ever feeling like it's trying too hard. That's the secret weapon of this film. It sounds simple, but it's sneakily sophisticated. Every line feels like it belongs in that moment, in that character's mouth, with that specific emotional undercurrent humming underneath it. Let's take Alex Finch, Robert Downey Jr., as reincarnated character, as the perfect example. His dialogue is packed with layered irony. On the surface, he's just a smart, charming young guy with a talent for talking his way through awkward situations. But underneath it, the soul of a middle-aged man who died decades earlier, trying to re-navigate a world that has moved on without him. The script gives him these brilliantly awkward verbal slip-ups, moments when he accidentally speaks with too much familiarity to Corinne or throws out historical details he shouldn't know. The brilliance is in how those moments aren't played for drama, they're played for fun. There's a constant low-level comedic tension in everything he says. He'll say something as innocent as, "You look so familiar," and the whole audience holds its breath because we know what he doesn't. And then the film flips it. Later on, once he does know, he's stuck trying to avoid saying the wrong thing, which makes every line a tightrope walk. It's delightful, it's nerve-wracking, and it's so cleverly written. Then there's Corinne, played with gentle strength by Cybill Shepherd. Her lines are laced with this quiet grief, like she's always speaking from just a little behind a curtain of memory. She's not overly dramatic. She doesn't launch into tearful speeches, but her words feel chosen, weighed, and meaningful. When she reminisces about her late husband, it's often casual, offhand, and that's what makes it hurt even more. The script respects her emotional restraint. There's a moment where she says something like, "He was the love of my life," and then he was gone. It's simple. It's almost cliché. But coming from her, in that moment, with that history, it lands like a punch to the gut. The writing isn't trying to impress, it's trying to be true. And it is. And then you have Miranda, their daughter, whose dialogue is a breath of fresh air. She's modern, unburdened, a little impulsive, and completely unaware of the reincarnation craziness swirling around her. Her lines are full of youthful energy and flirtation, and yet when the emotional truth finally slaps her in the face, the writing lets her drop the charm and just be raw. There's one scene where she's trying to process what Alex is telling her, the ridiculous, impossible truth, and the writers give her the grace to not react with melodrama. Instead, she stumbles, stutters, tries to find a logical loophole, and then finally, heartbreakingly, says something like, "That's insane, but why does it feel right?" Boom. A line like that carries weight because it's not trying to be the big line. It just is. Even side characters like Philip, the best friend with a torch still burning for Corinne, are given rich dialogue. His lines aren't just exposition or filler, they're soaked in a kind of frustrated charm. He says things like a man who spent years being polite when what he really wanted was to scream. And when the plot twists start tying people in emotional knots, he gets some of the funniest and most quietly tragic lines. "I've waited 30 years, and I'm still your backup plan," he says in one breathless moment, and just like that, the comedy snaps into pathos. The script is also packed with understated wit. It never tries to be a comedy in the broad sense, but it lets cleverness sneak into even the most mundane exchanges. There are running jokes about past life déjà vu, awkward coincidences, and the absurdity of falling in love with someone who might technically be your daughter. These jokes are written with just enough restraint that they never feel gimmicky, they feel earned. And that makes them land even harder. And then there are the quiet, introspective lines, the ones that don't get laughs or tears, but make you stop and feel. A line like, "What if love doesn't die with the body, just floats into a conversation, casual as anything, and suddenly you're thinking about it for the rest of the film. That's good writing. That's writing that invites you into the emotional philosophy of the movie without banging you over the head with it. Another thing to admire is how the dialogue adapts to mood. The pacing of the conversations shifts depending on the stakes. Light-hearted scenes are fast and breezy, full of back-and-forth banter. But when the emotional temperature rises, everything slows down. Sentences stretch, pauses widen, and the dialogue becomes less about what's said and more about what wants to be said but can't be. That rhythm is built into the script. It's part of the emotional score, and it's masterful. And let's not forget, the script pulls off a narrative concept that could easily have fallen apart in lesser hands. Reincarnation, romantic entanglements across lifetimes, a love triangle where one guy is technically the ghost of the husband, and the other is the guy who's been in love with a widow for decades. That could have been a train wreck, but the writing treats it with a combination of sincerity and self-awareness. It never winks too hard at the audience, but it also never pretends the situation isn't weird. It leans into the weirdness, but with heart. So yes, the dialogue and chances are as engaging. Yes, the script is filled with memorable lines. But more importantly, it feels real, even in a story that's completely unreal. That's the magic trick. The film might ask you to believe in reincarnation, but it never asks you to believe in fake people. Every word sounds like it belongs to someone who lived, who lost, who loved, and who's trying to make sense of a second chance that came out of nowhere. That's what makes the dialogue land, not just how it sounds, but what it means beneath the surface. If there's one thing Chances Are does with absolute flair, it's playing with genre like it's a toy chest full of surprises. At first glance, you might walk in expecting a typical 80s romantic comedy, and yes, it has those vibes. Charming leads, light-hearted tone, a few well-timed awkward kisses, but what sets it apart is how it tiptoes across multiple genres, juggles them midair, and still manages to stick the landing. It doesn't just sit in one genre lane. It takes a scenic drive through several, waving gleefully at the familiar while occasionally tossing a cliché out the window. Romantic comedy. Oh yes, that's the foundation, no doubt. You've got the flirty glances, the love triangle, the miscommunications that spiral into comedy gold. But here's where it gets cheeky. This isn't a love triangle in the usual sense. It's a triangle where one of the romantic leads is the reincarnated spirit of a dead husband. That's not your standard two guys, one girl formula. It's more like one guy, one ghost, one daughter of the ghost's old wife. It sounds ridiculous, and yet it works because the movie embraces the premise without ever winking too hard. It walks the tightrope between absurdity and genuine emotional depth, and that's where it earns its romantic fantasy badge. Fantasy, by the way, is where things really get spicy. Reincarnation isn't just a side plot, it's the engine of the story. But instead of going full science fiction or turning into a mystical mystery with fog machines and ominous chanting, the movie sprinkles just enough magical realism to keep things light. The rules of this world are clear. Souls come back, memories come flooding in, and awkwardness ensues. But it never bogs itself down trying to explain the how or why. It knows its audience doesn't need a theology lecture. They want to see what happens when your boyfriend turns out to be your reincarnated dad's soul in someone else's body. It's bonkers. It's brilliant. And the genre blending never feels forced. It's as if the film said, let's take romantic comedy, stir in a ghost story, add a pinch of metaphysical musing, and just see what happens. Spoiler, what happens is delightful chaos. And what about drama? There's more of it than you'd expect. But instead of heavy-handed melodrama, the film leans into emotional complexity. We're dealing with grief, identity, second chances, and love that literally spans lifetimes. There's a bittersweet undercurrent beneath the breezy tone, a sense that life is short, love is weird, and sometimes the universe gives you one more shot just to mess with you. Scenes that could have been played for slapstick are instead laced with surprising tenderness. When Alex, Downey Jr., starts realizing who he used to be and what he left behind, there's a real sadness beneath the comedy. And when Corinne starts suspecting that this young man might somehow know her too well, the movie doesn't rush to turn it into farce. It lets that tension simmer, adding emotional weight to an otherwise outlandish setup. That's smart genre work, using the rules of one genre, comedy, to soften the entry into another drama, and then making both stronger in the process. But chances are doesn't stop there. It even flirts with mystery, not a whodunit, but a gentle unraveling of identity. There's a suspense to watching Alex remember, watching the characters piece things together, waiting for the big reveal to drop. It's not edge-of-your-seat suspense, but it's enough to keep you hooked, to make you lean in and wonder, when is someone going to figure this out? And what the heck happens when they do? That tension rides quietly underneath the light tone, giving the story just enough of a pulse to keep the narrative moving forward. As for clichés, oh, they're there, but with a twist. Yes, there's a prom-style dance scene. Yes, there's a romantic picnic. Yes, there's the classic, I love you but I can't be with you speech. But every time you think the movie is about to step into predictable territory, it flips the script. That romantic confession? It's interrupted by existential panic over reincarnation. That kiss in the rain, complicated by the fact that one party might be kissing their own daughter. The movie uses genre conventions not as a crutch, but as bait. It sets up expectations, and then gleefully smashes them like a piñata. Even the tone is a balancing act. Too much humor, and the story would collapse under its own weirdness. Too much drama, and the reincarnation plot would feel heavy-handed. But Chances Are finds that sweet spot where the absurd and the emotional can dance together without stepping on each other's toes. And let's not forget, the humor isn't just surface-level banter. It's situational, it's character-based, and it's often rooted in discomfort, which is what makes it so delicious. Watching Philip, Ryan O'Neal's character, grapple with the fact that his romantic rival might be the ghost of his best friend, that's both hilarious and emotionally layered. It's not just comedy, it's genre-layered irony at its finest. So yes, Chances Are is a romantic comedy, but it's also a fantasy, a drama, a metaphysical mystery, and a cheeky genre experiment rolled into one. It doesn't just follow conventions, it dances around them, pokes at them, and occasionally throws them off a cliff. And somehow, instead of crashing and burning, it soars. That's not just good genre execution, that's genre play at its most confident and creative. Chances Are doesn't march into the room with a protest sign or an overt political agenda, but it has more to say about society, culture, and the messy tangle of human values than you might expect from a romantic fantasy comedy dressed in pastel 80s flair. On the surface, it's a quirky reincarnation tale with attractive people trading glances and past life secrets, but dig a little deeper, and you'll find a surprisingly reflective mirror on generational shifts, evolving roles, and how we negotiate love, grief, and identity in a world that keeps moving forward, even when we're stuck looking back. Let's start with its portrayal of women, specifically Corinne and Miranda, two generations living under very different social expectations. Corinne, as a widow in the late 80s, has been frozen in time by her grief, living in a kind of emotional stasis that reflects a more traditional view of enduring romantic loss. The loyal widow, the ideal of eternal love, the one and only that must never be replaced. But the film doesn't celebrate that unconditionally, it questions it. Is Corinne honoring love, or is she trapped by it? Has her grief become part of her identity in a way that limits her? The movie nudges at those questions with care. It doesn't judge her, but it definitely asks, what happens when love stops you from living? That's not just a personal issue, that's a cultural one, especially in a society that often romanticizes long-suffering loyalty without asking what it costs. Then there's Miranda, who represents a new kind of woman, independent, confident, sexually empowered, and unburdened by the past. Her flirtation with Alex is playful and assertive. She initiates. She pursues. She embodies a cultural moment where young women were starting to break away from inherited narratives and write their own. And yet, through the film's wild reincarnation twist, she's suddenly tethered to her mother's past in the most awkward, Freudian way imaginable. It's like the movie is throwing this postmodern, liberated woman into a classic melodrama and saying, now what? That tension, between tradition and progress, between loyalty and freedom, isn't just comic fuel. It's social commentary wrapped in charm. The film also pokes at masculinity, particularly through the characters of Philip and Louie/Alex. Philip is the embodiment of the nice guy who waits in the wings, hoping loyalty will be rewarded. He's dependable, patient, and quietly simmering with decades of unrequited love. But the movie doesn't paint him as a hero. It makes his passivity a kind of flaw. He's stuck, just like Corinne. And when Alex storms in, young, impulsive, emotionally messy, it's like masculinity has rebooted. Alex represents a more expressive, emotionally open, slightly chaotic version of manhood. He cries, he fumbles, he remembers love in fragments, and he's constantly trying to reconcile who he was with who he is. That internal conflict becomes a subtle critique of the idea that men must be either stoic protectors or romantic pursuers. Alex is both and neither. He's a man searching for identity in a new time, a new body, a new role. It's comical, yes, but it's also quietly revolutionary. Then there's the film's larger cultural commentary on love itself. Chances are essentially asks, is love tied to memory? To the body? To the soul? And if love can outlast death, what do we do with that? This taps into something deeply human, and deeply Western in particular. In a culture obsessed with soulmates, eternal love, and romantic destiny, the movie takes that concept and runs it through a blender. It doesn't dismiss the idea of soulmates, but it complicates it. If your soulmate comes back in someone else's body, do you still love them? Are you supposed to? And if not, what does that say about our beliefs about eternal connection? It's funny, yes, but it's also poking at the romantic ideals that culture has sold us, sometimes beautifully, sometimes problematically. Also worth noting is the way Chances Are handles family dynamics. There's a generational dance happening throughout the story, where the past keeps crashing into the present. The film seems to suggest that family is both a comfort and a curse. Everyone is haunted, sometimes literally, by who they were, what they've lost, and what they can't quite say out loud. It's a sharp observation about how families preserve their own mythology and resist change. Corinne has kept Louie alive in memory, and Miranda has grown up in the shadow of that ghost without even realizing it. So when Alex arrives, the past suddenly takes up real space in the room. The film uses the surreal twist to make a very grounded point. Sometimes, in order to move forward, we have to stop idealizing the past. Sometimes, you need to release your ghosts. And all of this is wrapped in a delightfully glossy package that doesn't scream social critique, which makes it all the more effective. The movie isn't preachy, it's curious. It doesn't force its commentary. It weaves it into conversations, glances, and emotional beats that sneak up on you. One moment you're laughing at a reincarnation mix-up, and the next you're quietly questioning how your culture treats grief, identity, and second chances. So while Chances Are might not look like a film that's here to shake up the status quo, it's doing a lot of subtle social and cultural needle threading beneath the charm. It's examining how we define love, how we process loss, how gender roles are shifting, and how generational baggage gets passed down, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. It's cheeky, yes, but it's also quietly wise. And that's what makes it such a fun and surprisingly rich watch. Chances Are is one of those films that sneaks up on you. It lures you in with its whimsical premise, reincarnation, mistaken identities, past lives colliding with present love, and before you know it, you're fully invested in this absurd, beautiful, emotionally tangled love triangle that feels more like a romantic Rubik's Cube. It's the kind of movie where audiences don't just watch passively, they lean in. They gasp when characters realize too much too fast. They giggle when awkwardness erupts in the form of reincarnated ex-husbands flirting with their former daughters. Yes, it's as bonkers as it sounds, but that's what makes it irresistible. The film creates a kind of warm, emotional loop where laughter and tenderness swirl together, never letting you get too comfortable in one feeling before pivoting to another. From the very beginning, viewers are drawn into the central mystery, not a dark thriller kind of mystery, but the romantic, how is this all going to work out kind. There's genuine curiosity about how the story will resolve itself, because it's not just about who ends up with whom. It's about identity, grief, healing, and how people rewrite their stories when the past refuses to stay buried. That emotional tug-of-war is deeply relatable. Everyone has wondered what they'd say or do if they had a second chance. At love, at closure, at living life with a little more bravery. This movie plays with that idea in such an imaginative way that audiences can't help but project their own wishes, regrets, or what-ifs onto the characters. And let's not forget the laughter. The humor in Chances Are isn't cheap slapstick or throwaway gags. It's situational, built from character and emotional stakes. Watching Alex realize he's actually Louie, or seeing Philip's face when he realizes the young man he's mentoring is also his love rival from a past life, delivers these awkward, deliciously tense moments that crackle with charm. The audience laughs not just because it's funny, but because it's uncomfortably human. There's joy in the ridiculousness, and that joy is infectious. You don't just chuckle, you feel like you're in on the joke. That sense of shared absurdity creates a bond between the film and its audience that lasts beyond the credits. Then there are the emotional gut punches. You might not expect it from a pastel-tinted 80s rom-com, but Chances Are has real emotional weight. When Corinne finally confronts the idea that the love of her life has come back, just not in a way that can ever work, it's a heartbreak that doesn't rely on melodrama. It's quiet, it's haunting, and audiences feel it. There's something profound about the way the film handles love and loss, not by resolving everything neatly, but by showing that some things, even magical things, are complicated and bittersweet. That honesty is what hits people in the chest. That's what lingers. The movie also sparks conversation. It's the kind of story that has viewers asking, what would you do? Would you believe someone if they claimed to be your reincarnated husband? Could you love them again in a new body? Would you want to? It's a perfect post-movie dinner topic because the film doesn't give easy answers. It throws all these big emotional questions into the air and lets them hover there, like heart-shaped helium balloons that never quite touch the ceiling. And when it comes to rewatch value, Chances Are is like comfort food with a twist. Once you know the story, the second viewing becomes even more delightful. You notice all the subtle clues, all the moments where characters are on the verge of recognition, or where irony is at play just under the surface. You catch the sadness in Corinne's eyes a bit earlier, the depth behind Philip's loyalty, the cheekiness in Alex's expressions when he flirts with a life he doesn't fully remember. It's a movie that reveals more of itself the more you engage with it. Not because it's complicated, but because it's emotionally rich. And audiences feel that. So yes, Chances Are absolutely resonates. It might not make everyone cry, though it easily could. It might not blow up into a meme or a viral clip, but it will leave you feeling like you just visited an old friend you didn't realize you missed. It lives in that sweet spot where fantasy and emotion overlap, where the heart races a little and the brain buzzes with what-ifs. It doesn't just entertain. It wraps you up, spins you around, and gently drops you back into your seat with a slightly misty smile and maybe, just maybe, a strange desire to call someone you haven't thought about in years. When you start comparing Chances Are to other romantic comedies, whether from the 80s, 90s, or even modern times, it becomes clear very quickly that this film plays in a sandbox all its own. Most rom-coms don't open with a man dying and being reincarnated, only to unknowingly fall for his own daughter while his former best friend secretly pines for his widow. That alone puts Chances Are in a different league. It's as if someone took the romantic whimsy of While You Were Sleeping, sprinkled in the cosmic shenanigans of defending your life, and then added a dose of Oedipus-like complications just to see what would happen. It shouldn't work, but somehow weirdly it does. And that's precisely what makes it such a standout. If you stack it up against the more grounded giants of a genre like When Harry Met Sally, Notting Hill, or even Sleepless in Seattle, Chances Are feels like the quirky cousin who showed up late to the party wearing mismatched shoes and carrying a heart-shaped time machine. Where those films thrive on realistic dialogue, urban settings, and believable relationship timelines, Chances Are throws realism out the window and goes full tilt into metaphysical mayhem. And yet, even with all the past life plot twists and borderline uncomfortable romance scenarios, it still manages to hit those emotional notes that audiences come to rom-coms for: wistful longing, big love, heartbreak, hope. In terms of tone and style, Chances Are is a curious hybrid. It borrows elements from supernatural romance dramas like Somewhere in Time or Heaven Can Wait, both of which toy with fate, identity, and reincarnation. But those films tend to lean into melodrama or heavy-handed sentimentality. Chances Are prefers a lighter touch, balancing its weightier themes with moments of awkward comedy and witty dialogue. The result? A movie that invites you to laugh at its absurdity while still tugging at your heartstrings when it counts. It never fully commits to one genre, and that genre fluidity, once considered a risk, is now one of the reasons it feels ahead of its time. Let's not forget its oddball connection to family comedies of the era like Vice Versa or like Father Like Son, where identity swapping and body hopping were popular tropes. Except in Chances Are, instead of a body switch, you get a soul comeback, and the stakes aren't just about hijinks or learning a lesson, they're emotional and existential. The comedy isn't built on a setup for silly gags, though it has them, but on the tension of identity and forbidden affection. The fact that the film manages to be both playful and deeply weird without falling apart is a kind of miracle in itself. Now, if we talk about how it compares within director Emile Ardolino's own filmography, we really see how different it is. His most famous hit, Dirty Dancing, is all about passion, coming of age, and social divides, told with slick dance sequences and a summer love backdrop. Chances Are, on the other hand, has no dance montages or sultry resort hookups. It replaces sweat and sizzle with a narrative that makes your brain do somersaults. But there's a similar heartbeat in both films, an emotional through line that says love doesn't always make sense, that timing is everything, and that sometimes you just have to take a wild leap into the unknown. Even when you place Chances Are in the broader conversation of supernatural romances that came later, like The Time Traveler's Wife, 13 Going on 30, or About Time, it still feels uniquely off-kilter. Those films use time, memory, and metaphysical rules to explore loss and longing, but they tend to clean up after themselves emotionally. Chances Are leaves behind some mess. It embraces the discomfort of what it means to have a past and a present collide so violently. It doesn't try to sanitize the confusion, and that gives it a strange kind of honesty. It's not emotionally tidy, but it's emotionally real, in its own wildly imaginative way. One could argue that Chances Are was a genre bender before genre bending became the norm. At a time when most romantic comedies followed a safe and familiar three-act arc, boy meets girl, conflict arises, big romantic gesture, this movie tossed all the rules out the window. It asked audiences to suspend disbelief on a massive scale, to accept that the love of your life might return to you in a new body, that grief doesn't just fade, and that sometimes closure looks like letting go rather than holding on. That's a bold ask for a rom-com in 1989. What makes Chances Are enduring, and what sets it apart from its contemporaries, is its willingness to go strange without losing its heart. While other romantic comedies build their charm on relatability, Chances Are builds it on curiosity. You don't always see yourself in the characters. You see your fears, your hopes, your impossible questions. What if you could come back? What if you found love again, but in a form you never expected? What if the past came knocking, and you didn't know what to say? So no, Chances Are doesn't fit neatly into any box. It's not trying to be the next Pretty Woman, or 4 Weddings and a Funeral. It's trying to be something else entirely, an earnest, offbeat love story with the soul of a fantasy and the awkwardness of a family reunion gone slightly off the rails. In a sea of formulaic rom-coms, Chances Are might be the odd duck, but it's the one people remember. And in film, sometimes being memorable is far more important than being perfect. Let's really dive deep into the magical, metaphor-packed undercurrent that flows through Chances Are because, trust me, beneath its quirky premise and 80s rom-com charm, this film is a treasure chest of symbolic meaning, poetic callbacks, and hidden layers. The reincarnation gimmick isn't just there to get a few laughs or generate romantic awkwardness, although it does both beautifully. It's the film's gateway into exploring some pretty philosophical and emotional territory. This isn't just a comedy about love and second chances. It's a whimsical meditation on fate, identity, memory, and the passage of time, dressed up in pastel colors and soft lighting. Start with the film's biggest symbolic engine, reincarnation. On a surface level, it's played for delightful chaos. Boy meets girl, boy falls for girl, boy turns out to be her reincarnated dad's soul. But step back, and you realize this is really about emotional legacy. Louie's return as Alex isn't random. It's fate folding in on itself, a cosmic encore of unresolved love and unfinished emotional business. Reincarnation becomes a metaphor for the way love haunts us. It's about how people we've lost continue to shape our lives, our choices, and even our relationships with others. You could almost see Alex not just as a character, but as a living embodiment of memory itself, restless, curious, and desperate to be seen and understood again. Then there's the tension between past and present, a classic symbolic theme that chances or handles with surprising elegance. The entire movie is a tug-of-war between who the characters were and who they are now. Corinne is suspended in the past, emotionally preserved like a keepsake, unable to move on from Louie. Philip is trapped in a state of unfulfilled love and loyalty. Miranda, ironically the most modern of them all, ends up attracted to a soul she was literally born from. The film gently, and sometimes hilariously, asks, can we truly start over if the past is still living inside us? Alex's confusion mirrors our own attempts at moving on while still carrying emotional baggage. He's not just Louie in a new body, he's a metaphor for emotional echo. A reminder that even when we think we've closed a chapter, the story might still be whispering. And let's talk about the mirror imagery. This film uses literal and figurative reflections in wonderfully subtle ways. Mirrors, windows, glances that linger too long, they all reflect more than just faces. They symbolize moments of self-realization and identity crisis. When Alex looks in the mirror, does he see a college student or a man who once wore a wedding ring? That moment when recognition flickers in his eyes is deeply symbolic. It's the collision of two lives, two selves. The mirror becomes a metaphor for duality. In that glass is not just who you are, but who you used to be. And for Corinne and Philip, every look at Alex becomes a haunted reflection of someone they thought was gone forever. The settings, too, are soaked in symbolic meaning. Corinne's home feels like a shrine, frozen in time, adorned with nostalgia, filled with shadows of a love that refuses to fade. It's not just a house, it's an emotional museum. Compare that to the vibrant, academic world Alex inhabits, brimming with youth, intellect, and new beginnings. These spaces aren't just places, they're psychological landscapes. One is rooted in memory, the other in potential. When Alex/Louie steps from one to the other, it's like watching someone cross from past life to present life, literally and metaphorically. Books play a quiet but powerful symbolic role too. Louie was a scholar, and Alex's eerie knowledge of obscure references becomes more than just a cute plot quirk. Books here represent continuity, knowledge, love, personality, essence that transcends physical life. It suggests that our passions, quirks, and even our language might carry over in mysterious ways. Every time Alex recites something only Louie would know, it's as if a page has turned back in time. It's a literary metaphor for soul continuity. And how about the theme of mischances? It's all over this film, threaded through dialogue and plot points like a bittersweet refrain. Philip loved Corinne, but never told her. Louie died before he could see Miranda grow up. Corinne lost the love of her life, only to find his soul reappearing in the most emotionally complicated form imaginable. The title, Chances Are, is itself symbolic of luck, destiny, and all the forks in the road we take or miss. Every character in the story is living with what-ifs. The film doesn't just show us their present dilemmas, it whispers about their past regrets, gently reminding the audience how fleeting and precious connection really is. Even the film's more comedic beats carry symbolic weight. Alex's inappropriate flirtation with Miranda, while totally played for laughs, symbolizes the confusion of personal boundaries when identity is blurred. The awkwardness isn't just situational, it's deeply human. It represents how sometimes, even with the best intentions, emotions can get tangled when the past is unresolved. Silence is another beautiful metaphor in the film. There are moments, brief, quiet pauses, where no one speaks, but everything is felt. These silences represent unspoken grief, lingering affection, and the weight of recognition. They are tiny emotional earthquakes that ripple through the story, reminding us that not every feeling can be articulated. Some are just meant to be endured. So yes, on the surface Chances Are is a breezy romantic comedy with a supernatural twist. But beneath the charming dialogue and awkward reunions is a story humming with emotional subtext and symbolic richness. It's about souls that never stop loving, time that folds in on itself, and the funny, painful, beautiful ways our past shapes our present. It's about the things we carry, through time, through memory, and maybe even through lifetimes. And that's the kind of storytelling that stays with you long after the credits roll, not because of what it tells you, but because of what it quietly reveals. Now let's say all this talk about reincarnated romance charming 80s aesthetics, and a young Robert Downey Jr. has you curious, rightfully so, and you're asking the big question, where can I watch Chances Are? Is it hidden in some dusty VHS bin at a thrift store? Do I need a time machine back to 1989? Thankfully, no DeLorean is required. This gem has gracefully made its way into the digital age, and you've got several cozy options depending on your preferred viewing style. If you're someone who loves to stream with your feet up and snacks in hand, Chances Are can often be found rotating on a few major streaming platforms. It's one of those titles that occasionally pops up on services that specialize in classic or romantic films. The key is checking platforms like Amazon Prime Video, Hulu, or Tubi, where nostalgic treasures like this tend to live temporarily. These services change their catalog regularly, so it's kind of like playing hide and seek with your favorite 80s movie. One day it's there waiting for you like an old friend, and the next it's off vacationing in the digital ether. But don't worry, search functions and watch lists are your best tools here. Prefer to own your movies and build your digital library like a proud collector? You're in luck. Chances Are is widely available for digital purchase or rental on platforms like Apple TV, Google Play, YouTube Movies, and Vudu. Renting is a great option if you're in the mood for a one-time heartwarming viewing with a side of whimsical comedy. But if you fall in love with it, and there's a solid chance you will, you can grab the digital copy and rewatch the reincarnated rom-com magic anytime you like. It's the kind of movie you'll want to revisit when you're in need of a feel-good flick with a little bit of cosmic chaos. And for the old-school cinephiles out there who appreciate the tactile experience of physical media, yes, it exists on DVD. It might not come with a ton of special features or behind-the-scenes extras, but there's a certain charm to sliding a disc into a player, hearing the whir of the tray, and letting the 80s take you on a time-traveling romantic ride. It's also a great addition to any rom-com collection, sitting nicely on the shelf between When Harry Met Sally and Ghost. Now, for those wondering if it's playing in theaters, that's a bit trickier. Chances Are isn't part of any major theatrical re-release lineup, but every now and then, it might pop up in a retro screening at independent theaters or film festivals that specialize in nostalgia nights. These are rare, but oh so fun if you get the chance. Watching this movie with a live audience who laughs at every awkward moment and swoons at every romantic twist is a beautiful thing. So if you hear about a local throwback movie marathon, keep your eyes peeled. You might just get to see Louie Jeffries' celestial return on the big screen. And for the best viewing experience, dim the lights, grab some buttery popcorn, and maybe even a box of tissues for the sentimental scenes. Let yourself soak in the 80s charm, the music, the fashion, the hair, and just go along for the ride. Whether you're watching solo, with friends, or introducing it to someone for the first time, Chances Are is best enjoyed when you fully lean into its magical, quirky, heart-tugging world.